Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Nancy was deftly and confidently serving customers in the cafe, maneuvering between tables and smiling charmingly at the customers. Two twin kids, about 8 years old, came out of the back room and began to fidget. "Mom, are you coming home soon? We're bored." The woman stopped beside her sons, flicked them on the nose, and said cheerfully, "Marcus, Mike, what's the mood of the team? What was the deal this morning? Whoever behaves well gets a present from the bunny on the way home." "Fair enough. Let's better draw a picture of how we'll go to the river with a tent this summer and catch fish. Mom has an hour left, and then pick up Kelly and Jenna from kindergarten and go straight home. Let's not upset the bunny, shall we?" The little ones immediately stopped whimpering and began to shine. "We won't." "Yay, we're going to the river." "That's it, Mom. We're painting." The woman winked at them and ran off to get another order. A respectable-looking man watched the whole thing from a distance and directly admired the waitress. "She makes everything fast and easy. She is great with kids, and she is so effective. Appetizing form, a bright red mop of hair, and charming open smile. Well, you just can't take your eyes away. No silicone or Botox. You can rarely see that nowadays." The man had dinner, and when Nancy came to get the check, he asked her to sit down at the table for a minute. The businessman began at once and to the point. "Hello, my name is David. I have my own business in real estate. I also have a 6-year-old son, Alexander, but my wife is gone. She died 5 years ago. She had a serious hereditary disease. She was not allowed to give birth at all, and she wouldn't have it. Why am I telling you all this, you may ask? Well, I have a huge favor to ask. I've noticed how well you manage to do both work and children, and I want to ask you to babysit Alex tomorrow night. I think you can easily manage with this experience. These are your twins, aren't they?" Nancy was taken aback and babbled. "Thank you, of course, but I actually have 4 children, not 2. I have 2 other daughters. They're 4 and 5 years old, in kindergarten now, Jenna and Kelly. The offer is, of course, quite unexpected." "Why me? You're a wealthy person. You can hire a nanny. It's quick and easy to do now." "And why tomorrow?" "I have a shift." David began to explain. "Yes, you're right. Hiring a nanny is not a problem. But finding a good person who knows how to approach children is a huge challenge, even with my resources. You see, it's hard for Sasha without his mother. I can buy him anything, but you can't buy a mother's love. And through the agency, there are young misses who only wait for money and play on the phone, the elderly pensioners. And tomorrow, because I have very important negotiations, and I cannot not go to them. And the new nanny will not start work until Monday. Don't worry about the shift. I'll talk to your boss and arrange everything. He's a very good old friend of mine. And yes, I'll pay you generously. So, do you agree?" Nancy hesitated at first. This is all very strange. Why would I want someone else's problems? And there are all kinds of kids. But on the other hand, it's only one night. Why not help someone out? You can see that he is not a bore and not some snob. After all, where there are 4, there are 5. And she agreed. "I agree to help you. But what am I going to do with my kindergarten? I'll never leave them alone for the whole evening. That's out of the question." The man smiled. "What are you talking about? I wasn't going to suggest that. Take your children with you. My house is huge, so there's plenty of room for everybody. My son just doesn't have enough to socialize with his peers. It would be good for him. It's a deal then. I'll pick you up at 5. Give me the address." Nancy was busy all night. The boys' homework, dinner, then a bedtime story, then cleaning up after the pranksters. And yet David was never out of her mind. To be honest, she really liked the man. He didn't have the arrogance and haughtiness of the rich people. He was simple, smiling, and very polite. And outwardly he was very good-looking, tall, stately, About her age, 30-something. The only thing was that the woman was very worried whether she would get along with his son. Children of rich people can be very unbearable and spoiled. No one could tell them what to do. Would they make friends with her children? Won't he hurt them? I'm just scared. It was late at night outside, when her babies had calmed down and started snoozing. The apartment was unusually quiet. The woman took a bath and stretched her tired legs on the bed, swollen from the day's running. Yes, it is not easy to manage and raise 4 children alone. How deadly tired she was of pulling everything on her own. She was like an ant rolling an enormous stone, and still she could not climb the mountain. Nancy glanced mechanically at the portrait of her late husband on the wall in a frame, and suddenly she was sad, going over her entire life. Nancy did not know her parents. For as long as she could remember, she had lived with her grandmother. She told me that her mother liked to go for a walk, so she brought her in a hem and whisked her away again to the grooms. Therein disappeared, leaving her 6-month-old daughter in the care of her grandmother. The woman was so angry at her good-for-nothing daughter that she did not want to hear about her, not even her name. She just cut her out of her life. Of course, Grandma could not buy expensive clothes or toys. We lived very modestly, but Grandma was very kind. She never scolded her granddaughter seriously. She just always whispered, "Look, Nancy, get married first, and then go to bed. Otherwise, it'll be like your mother. I don't want to remember. Who does she think she is? We've never had a woman who's had a walker, and now you've got such a shame." After graduating high school, Nancy went to medical school and moved to the capital, to a dormitory. Nancy was a very prominent and beautiful girl. There was no shortage of suitors. Metropolitan life overwhelmed by its pressure and noise. She quickly made friends with her dorm mates, and they often went for a walk. They never had money for a movie or a cafe, so they mostly went to the amusement park. Everything there was inexpensive. She met her future husband, Igor, by chance, at an amusement park. She and the girls were having fun, and he was walking with the babies in the stroller. The kids were screaming hysterically, and the man was trying to change their diapers. He was all sweaty, his hands were shaking. Nothing worked. When he saw the girls on the bench, he pleaded, "Beauties, can you help me? Hold one of the sons, because I don't understand how the Dan jumpsuit unzips. And who came up with this stupid design anyway?" Her friends were frightened and were afraid to approach the baby themselves. But Nancy was not timid. She deftly took the baby in her arms, began to hum to him, and rocked him. Surprisingly, the boy immediately stopped crying and fell silent, just looked at her with his bottomless blue eyes. The man breathed a sigh of relief and leisurely changed the second baby. Then they switched. That's how they met. The girls' girlfriends ran home long ago, twisting at the temple, when Nancy decided to stay and walk with the babies some more. The man's name was Mason, and he was 10 years older than 18-year-old Nancy. They wandered the shady alleys, ate delicious popsicles, and he told her about his life. "Thank you, Nancy, for your help. It's amazing. Usually my sons don't go to other people's arms very well, but they reached out to you. I raised them myself. It just so happens. I am a fisherman myself. I go on long voyages to the northern seas. The pay is very good. I have my own 2-room apartment. As it happens, I had an affair with a girl, Wendy. Nothing serious. I didn't even know she was pregnant when I was on the road. When I got there, I found out Wendy had died in childbirth. And the boys, Mike and Marcus, were going to be put in a nursery. I didn't believe it at first, that it was my kids. Luda had always had a lot of men. I did a genetic test, and it turned out I was the father. How could I abandon my own children? What kind of an animal am I? I took them away, and now I'm raising them. It's very hard. I can't deny it. I have no skills. Well, I'll manage somehow. Nancy, would you like to come and visit us, just for fun? I'd love to. Mike and Marcus would love to. They welcomed you from the first second. We live not far from here. Though I know you're not likely to come, why should you, a young and beautiful girl, be such a burden? A whole kindergarten. Nancy promised to stop by, and she thought it would be their first and last meeting. But for some reason, the next weekend, her feet took her to Mason's. She bought the little ones a rattle, baked a cake, and went. When she saw Mason scurrying around the apartment in his apron, trying to feed the babies and cook meat in a pan at the same time, she felt so sorry for him and funny. Something in her soul turned over. The girl came through busily and took everything into her womanly hands. In 4 hands they made it all together, cooked a great dinner, then had tea, then walked with Mike and Marcus. And then Nancy didn't go anywhere else. She stayed at Mason's. No one understood her. Girlfriends tried to talk some sense into her. Nancy, are you crazy? Are you playing at being a mother's daughter? What do you need all this for? Haven't you got enough suitors? You're only 18. And he's 30, and he's got babies in his arms. It's a lifelong yoke. You're an idiot, for God's sake. With her mind, Nancy understood everything, but her heart was no longer her own. She didn't even know who she loved more, the boys or Igor, but she couldn't imagine life without the 3 of them. And after a month of their relationship, she became pregnant herself. So, one by one, the twins, Jenna and Kelly, were born. They had to drop out of school, and Nancy plunged headlong into motherhood. And Mason, to support such a large family, started taking long voyages again. He sent money on a regular basis, and Nancy wasn't poor, except that she saw her husband about once every 6 months. At first she missed him a lot, resented that they were not together, but then she got used to it. She learned to be a father and mother to her children. She made all the decisions boldly and wasn't afraid of any responsibility. But a year ago, Mason tragically died. He was washed out to sea in a violent storm. The widow received only a funeral letter. Her husband's body was never found. The woman, of course, was grieving, but what could she do? She had no right to lose heart after all. She had 4 small children in her arms. The children's allowances were miserable, so she had to look for a job. But where would they take her with so many children? In the cafe, she was barely accepted, and then warned straight away that if she goes on sick leave often, they would fire her immediately. She liked her job as a waitress, though she was on her feet, but she could adjust her schedule, and the tips were generous. After 6 months, she was allowed to bring her children with her if she had no one to leave them with. They were all obedient and did not make her uncomfortable. Her friends repeatedly told her not to suffer and to give Mike and Marcus to an orphanage. It would be easier. After all, they were not her blood relatives, but Nancy was terribly indignant and wouldn't even hear of it. She loved all 4 of them equally because she had raised the twins from the womb. How can you even imagine such savagery, to take her son by the hand and take him to the orphanage and leave him there for good? And how could she ever live, eat, and sleep in peace? I lived like a squirrel in a wheel, torn between work and children. I tried not to lose heart, and despite everything to believe in good things. The next day, as agreed, David brought Nancy and the children to his country mansion. They began to meet a small, skinny boy named Alex. Mike and Marcus quickly became friends with him and raced off to play in the cars. And little Jenna and Kelly were still a little shy in someone else's house. Nancy felt out of place, too. Everything unfamiliar, expensive, luxurious, like a palace. The businessman was already dressed and buttoning his shirt cufflinks. He was giving instructions. "Look, Nancy, I've let the cook go for the day, but there's plenty of food in the fridge. You can heat something up. I recently gave my son a real quadcopter. If you want, you can launch it in the backyard to please the kids. Oh, I almost forgot. Alex is allergic to oranges, and chocolate are strictly prohibited to him. I think that's it. I'll try to be back before 9 p.m. If anything, don't hesitate to call." "That's it. I'm counting on you." Nancy waved him off. "Don't worry. Alex and my twins are already playing. Everything will be fine. I will not let you down." Time flew by. Nancy fed everyone a delicious dinner, and Alex asked her to launch the quadcopter. He couldn't wait to show such an interesting toy to his new friends. And about Marcus and Mike, their eyes were burning. No joke when they will launch a real drone. Everybody went to the backyard together. Even girls who were restless got quiet and opened their mouths, seeing what was about to happen. Marcus, Mike, and Alex were hard at work figuring out how to use the new machine, and then the drone took off. The drone was hovering around for a long time. The kids were squealing and screaming in excitement. And then suddenly the hand shook. Alex lost control, and the quadcopter crashed somewhere behind the grounds. Jenna just groaned, and Alex cried out, "Oh, how did I do that? Dad will probably be angry, won't he? He just gave it to me. What should I do?" Nancy replied emphatically, "So, my lovelies, I'm going to run and find our lost girl, and you promise me that you'll play quietly in the yard, okay? And no fooling around. Don't hurt the girls. Alex, you, as the master of the house, are in charge. I hope for you." The proud little guy put his hand to his temple. "Yes, to be in charge. Everyone follow me, and let's go build a sand castle." And the kids rushed off to the big, beautiful sandbox. And Nancy ran in the direction where the flying gadget had fallen. She scolded herself. "That's always me. I shouldn't have touched it. What if I don't find it? David will think I'm stupid and irresponsible babysitter. One night with the kids, and already ruined such an expensive toy." The woman walked around the abandoned neighboring homestead, stinging all over her feet with nettles and swearing. "Well, where the hell is the quadcopter? Where did it fall?" Suddenly, out of the bushes, a scary-looking, overgrown, unkempt homeless man walked right at her. She cried out and backed away, thinking he was up to no good. But the old man waved his hands and began to explain. "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Is this what you're looking for?" And he held out the drone to her. The little guy was probably mischievous, wasn't he? "The screw was bent, but I fixed it, and now it is as good as new. Here you go. My name is Ethan." Nancy exhaled with relief. "What a fright you gave me. Yes, it was Alex playing with my kids, and you couldn't handle the controls. And I'm Nancy. Thank you for fixing it. I'll run, because the kids are alone there." The old man asked, "You must be a guest of David's. I haven't seen you here before." The woman replied, running away, "I'm keeping an eye on Alex. The owner of the house has important talks today. All right, goodbye." It was getting colder outside, and Nancy decided it was time for everyone to go inside and have tea with jam and pancakes she had baked. Suddenly, a cool car drove up to the house, and two glossy, very unpleasant young men began to call insistently and then to knock on the gate. Nancy reluctantly went to open it. The man brazenly walked into the courtyard and began an unpleasant conversation. "That's the way it is, madam. David owes us a lot of money, so now we'll take care of the house and his son ourselves. You're the babysitter, right? So go on, get the hell out of here." Nancy, to be honest, got cold feet, but she was ready to tear anyone apart for the children, so she responded sharply. "What right do you have to enter someone else's private property? I don't think I invited you here. You didn't hire me. You can't tell me what to do. When David arrives, then we'll deal with it. And I'm not giving Alex to you at all. I'm responsible for him with my head. Get out of here. Kids, get in the house now." The young men cackled and started walking toward her. "What are you going to do for us, woman? We're just wondering." Nancy grabbed her phone and started taking pictures of strangers and the license plate, and then pointing her finger at random and yelling, "And I'm going to call the police, and then we'll see who's right and who's wrong." And then, as if out of thin air, the homeless man materialized on my doorstep. He was holding a huge piece of board with nails in it, waving it around and yelling, "Let's get out of here. I got nothing to lose. I'll kill you. Get out," I said. The young men swore. They certainly didn't want any more trouble with witnesses, and they quickly left, but they said a threatening goodbye. "It won't be the last time we meet, madam. You shouldn't have. You wouldn't be sorry." When they left, Nancy roared and crouched on a bench in the gazebo. "Thank you, Ethan. If it weren't for you, what am I supposed to do? It's 9 o'clock at night, and David's still not here, and the phone's off. And then there's these. I don't know why I have to go through all this. Now I have to stay here. I can't drive back to town, and I'm not leaving Alex." The old man replied, "That's right. Otherwise, as soon as you leave, those bastards will immediately realize there's no one here, and they'll take everything for themselves. Don't worry, there's a security system. If anything, the alarm will go off, and the security agency will be here in 10 minutes. The door is good, the locks are good. Where's the owner gone? Oh, I don't have a good feeling. All right, I won't cave. Good night to you. I'll be here, just in case." Nancy responded with a frightened look. "No, I'm not letting you go. It's scary enough as it is. You stay in the guardhouse over there. I'll bring you some supper and a bed. I don't think David will scold you. It's an emergency. All right, I'm going inside to calm the children down. In the meantime, you two get settled in." Nancy wiped away her tears and said cheerfully, "Alex, my dad called. He's running late, and he wanted me to stay with you some more. Do you mind? Aren't we boring you?" The baby squealed happily. "Hooray! I'm having so much fun with you. I've never had so much fun with any babysitter. Mike, Marcus, let's go play with the railroad, and Jenna and Kelly can do puzzles. I've got all kinds. Shall I show you?" Nancy called work and asked to be excused for 2 days, just in case. Then, as usual, she bathed and put the children to bed, as there was plenty of room, and I didn't sleep a wink all night. She listened to every rustle in that huge and unfamiliar house. She kept dreaming of bandits coming in through the window or into the yard. Twice she went outside. The light in the gatehouse and the two were on, and that comforted the woman. So Ethan was awake too. A couple more days went by, and David still hadn't shown up at home. Nancy was beginning to panic, realizing something bad had happened. He couldn't have forgotten about her son. She didn't know how to lie and twist in front of Alex. Fortunately, he had not noticed anything yet, though he was wondering more and more why his father had never called him. In the past several times a day, and here, the youngsters tried again to sneak into the yard and find out how things were, but Nancy was already on the lookout, and this time they didn't succeed either. At work they also scolded me badly and said they would fire me. All in all, a complete nightmare. Ethan was on pins and needles. We have to do something. We can't just sit around. David is very responsible. He would never disappear like that. I'll probably go to the surrounding villages and ask around, see if any locals have seen or know anything. If that doesn't help, you'll have to go to the police, Nancy. This has gone too far." A woman was tormented by one question all the time. "Excuse me, Ethan, but why do you care so much about David? It's amazing. You care so much for him, as if he were a close relative of yours." The old man sighed heavily. "You guessed it. He's my own son. But I'm a lousy father. A disgrace. You see, I once had an affair in my youth with a woman, Molly. We even wanted to get married. And then I foolishly went to jail. And so it went. I got out. And then again, and so on 3 times. Of course, all my relatives cut me out of their lives. Who needs him? A hardened bastard. So the last time I went out, I decided to stop. Found Molly. She was already dying. Cancer had eaten her alive. She whispered to me before she died that my son was David the banker. So that's it. and I purposely settled in an abandoned manor house next door and watch his life, at least one eye on him. And all the time I blame myself for what so uselessly squandered his life in the camps. Nancy just shook her head. Gee, a bum is the father of an oligarch. That's how it is in life. Ethan went off to look for any trace of his father, and Nancy took care of the children at the businessman's house. She was getting the hang of it, and she had a crush on Alex, who was such a wonderful, kind, and helpful boy. But he was still sad about his father. He missed him terribly. It's good that Marcus and Mike kept distracting him with games and communication. But in the evening before he went to bed, he would hug Nancy and look into her eyes and ask her the same question. Aunt Nancy, will Daddy be back soon? You're not going to leave me, are you? You won't leave me, will you? The woman stroked his russet head, held him close to her, and answered, I won't leave you for sure, Alex, I swear. And Daddy will definitely be back soon. Do you believe me? And he answered quietly, I believe you. Lucky Marcus and Mike, and Jenna and Kelly, to have such a mom. You are good and kind, and you love kids. Meanwhile, Ethan went from village to village, asking the locals for information. At last he got a lead. In the village, the farm workers said that there were some people in a house that had been empty for a long time, and there was a car in the yard. The old man waited until evening and decided to check it out. He looked over the fence and marveled. It was David's car. So the scoundrels had stolen it and were holding it hostage here. Ethan, even though he was old and in poor health, now he felt as if he had a second wind because the situation was critical. His son had to be saved. He remembered how in his youth he had managed, running from the police, to penetrate into every crevice and remain unnoticed. And now, at first, he observed for a long time and found out that there was only one guard, albeit a big lumpy one, who sat on the veranda uninterruptedly. Then he peered cautiously through the windows, and in the farthest one he could make out David, who was tied to a chair. He was badly beaten and sat motionless with his head down. Something in the old man's heart knit and snapped. His fatherly feelings were aroused in him. He wanted to tear those bastards who had hurt his son. Ethan probed all the boards in the fence and found a narrow escape, peeling off one of them. He crawled like a pike through it, found the stairs to the attic, and made his way up without squeaking on any of the steps. He got into the house from the backyard and had no trouble finding the right room. The door was propped up by a table on the outside. The elderly man pushed it aside, trying not to make any noise, and quietly stepped inside. David looked at him indifferently and aloof, and lowered his head again, thinking that he too was from the gang. But the old man whispered softly to him, I'm not a bandit. I want to help you. Nancy sent me to find you. She's with the kids, don't worry. I'm Ethan. I live on the abandoned farmstead next door to you. Hold on, I'll untie you. And he began trying to untie the thick ropes with which the prisoner was tied tightly to the chair. The old man was all sweaty, trying as hard as he could, and it seemed to him like an eternity before he could do it. David finally stretched out his stiff and numb hands and almost screamed from the sharp pain. Thank you. How's Alex? I can imagine how scared he was that I was gone for so long. It was the competitors, damn them, who lured me out to an important meeting and stole me away on the way. And I believed him, like a fool. Do you know how many people are downstairs? The old man whispered. Only one, but a very big bumpkin. It's okay. I think 2 of us can handle it. And then the big guy, apparently sensing the stirring, decided to check on the prisoner and opened the door sharply. What happened there? The 2 strong men were rolling around on the floor, fighting, one blow after another. But David was weakened, and his strength was not in his favor. The bum began to pile on him, and then the bum grabbed a chair and thundered it down on the guard's head. The old man expected that he would collapse unconscious immediately, and he and David would have just enough time to escape. But the big guy just grimaced like a toothache, turned sharply, and went at the old man. No one had expected that. Ethan grabbed the bottle from the table, smashed it against the corner, and fought back, remembering his past. He managed to stab the bully in the thigh, and he screamed and slowly began to fall to the floor. David and Ethan immediately ran as fast as they could toward the car. The old man didn't even notice that during the fight the lumberjack's knife had stabbed him in the back, and already in the car, the bum felt very sick. Something hot started pouring down his back. He felt no pain. He was surprised and touched his hand, and it was covered in blood, and the seat of the car was covered in blood. David cried out, "God, are you hurt? When is the bastard going to die? Change your route and go to the hospital immediately. I can't let my savior die in my arms." Hold on. Ethan was getting worse before his eyes. He began wheezing and fainting, whispering as if he were delirious. "David, my son, forgive me, you foolish fool. I'm your father, a bum and a jailer. But I didn't know, you know. I just found out I had a son. I'm sorry." And the old man lost consciousness and never regained consciousness again. David ran to the surgery with him in his arms, screaming like a madman. "Help! Help! My father is dying. People! Somebody!" The frightened staff immediately ran out. There was a commotion. They put the old man on a gurney and immediately took him to the operating room, asking him what had happened. The police were called. David called Nancy and told him everything. The woman felt madly sorry for her old neighbor, but she breathed a sigh of relief. David is alive and well. She hurried to rejoice Alex. "Alex, your dad just called. He'll be home today." The boy didn't even believe it at first. "Really? Can I call him back?" And without waiting for an answer, he started dialing his father's number. He knew it by memory. Finally, Dad picked up the phone. "Son, Alex, I'm coming today. Are you listening to Nancy? Are you all right?" The kid couldn't take it anymore and roared, "Daddy, I missed you so much. Come over soon. Nancy is nice, but I still feel so bad without you." Nancy hugged Alex and whispered, "Well, why are you so glum? Daddy's here. He'll be home tonight. Come on, let's all go cook a nice dinner to welcome our host. Marcus, Mike, get the eggs and the pot, and Jenna and Kelly will pour the flour for me. The boys will be making delicious dumplings. We'll make one with a surprise. I wonder who will get one." The kids got busy with excitement, and the day flew by. It was getting dark outside when David, exhausted by the interrogations and worries, finally arrived home. He was so ashamed because the bandits had taken the bank cards and wallet, and he couldn't even buy Nancy and the children any presents. But everyone was so excited for him. Alex jumped on his neck, hugged and kissed him, and couldn't get enough of him. David took a shower, came into the kitchen, and gasped. Everyone was already sitting at the big dining table. The dumplings were smoking, and there was the smell of appetizers and salads. David suddenly remembered that he had not eaten normally for a week, for sure. In captivity, he had only been fed with a sort of balanda and water, and not every time. He greedily gobbled up the food. How delicious it was. Then he watched how Nancy got along with the children. They were discussing who would get the surprise dumpling. Everyone laughed. It was like they were all one big friendly family. David said dreamily, "How nice it is at home, especially with such a wonderful hostess. Nancy, you are so good. I have no words to express my gratitude. You cook amazing and get along with the kids, and the house is in order. Alex, let's not let Nancy go anywhere. What about you kids? Would you like to stay with us some more?" Marcus and Mike were the first to shout. "Hooray! Alex and I are best friends. Right, Alex?" Alex was happy too, and they rushed from the table to play soldiers. The girls went to play in the hospital, and Alex had plenty of toys to play with. At last the adults could talk and discuss everything. David poured a little cognac, and he and Nancy drank it together. Their nerves were shot. The man told her everything. You can imagine, I'm on my way to the negotiations, and suddenly on the road a pregnant woman votes. So I felt sorry for her. Why not let her down? She sat behind me and immediately sprayed some kind of pepper spray in my face. My friends ran up, tied me up, and took me to an empty dacha house in the village. And they started making me sign documents to sell the business. I wouldn't do it. Then they started threatening to steal my son. That's what I was most afraid of, to be honest. Thank God, we got through it. Nancy stepped in. That's how they came. They chased me out of here. And they wanted to take Alex away. I wouldn't let them. Thanks to Ethan, he drove them away. You said he got shot. How is he now? We must go and see the old man tomorrow. A very good man, though he's been in and out of jail all his life. David grew sad and gloomy. It's not good, Nancy, while the doctors are fighting for his life. You know, he told me in his half-witness state that he was my father. Do you think it's true? I didn't really have a father. Nancy only sighed. I don't know. He told me the same thing, that he recently found out by chance that you were his son. So he was looking out for you in the neighborhood, and he was too ashamed to tell you. A convict and a bum on top of that. You know, I grew up with my grandmother. My mother was no good. I didn't know my father at all. If my dad had turned up, I'd have been happy. It wouldn't matter if he was a convict or a bum. The main thing is a soulmate, the same blood, you know. David was even touched. Yes, Nancy, I understand. If it turns out to be true, I'll be happy. I don't care if he's a jailer. I don't care if he hasn't been around all these years. But he's there now. He saved my life. And now he's on the verge of death. Tomorrow morning we will go to the hospital. I'll ask Emily, the cook, to babysit for a couple of hours. Now may I go and lie down? You made such a good meal. And Nancy, please stay here for a while. The house just came alive with you and the kids, and Alex is so happy. I've never seen him like this before. Everyone kept telling me he had trouble communicating, and I watch him play with your kids and see that he doesn't have any problems. Nancy nodded in agreement and went to put the children to bed. In the middle of the night, she suddenly heard David scream from the bedroom. She was frightened out of her wits. For some reason, she thought of bandits, and as she was in her skinny nightgown, she rushed over there, thinking only that nothing had happened to him. Quietly, she entered the room. David was thrashing around in a cold sweat on the bed, screaming in a nightmare. I won't sign anything, and I won't give you my son. Is that clear? You can kill me right here. Daddy, don't die, please. Live. Nancy crouched on the edge of the bed and touched him by the shoulder, whispering softly, David, wake up. You're having a nightmare. You're home. Everything's all right. He immediately opened his eyes frightened and began them now, not understanding anything. Phew, Nancy, it's you. I was dreaming that the bandits still had me. The horror. Then I dreamt of my father dying. My God, you're so beautiful. You're like a goddess. I can't take my eyes off you. And he suddenly, without asking her permission, greedily entered her lips. A frenzied wave of passion came over both of them. And Nancy no longer understood anything, only gave herself to the tenderness and assertion of such a desired and strong man. Already in the morning, David whispered softly in her ear, That's it. You're mine now. Only my woman. Do you hear? I will never give such a treasure to anyone. Do you agree? Nancy smiled blissfully and nodded. She had never felt so good with anyone before. After breakfast, David and Nancy went to the hospital. The attending physician gave them some disappointing news. Sadly, Ethan's life still hangs in the balance. We wonder how he's still alive with his vitals. He's lost too much blood. We need to find a donor right away. David didn't hesitate to answer. I agree. He's my father, so I have to step up as a donor. I don't want him to die. Daddy saved my life. Paul had the necessary tests taken, and Nancy, too, just in case. The nurse came out of the lab and shocked everyone. You, David, are not a match, and it is unlikely that you are related to the patient. The blood types are completely different, but you, Nancy, can help him, and your blood type and RA factor are the same. So, would you like to donate? Nancy agreed. She felt sorry for the poor, broken man in human terms, but the nurse's words were in her mind, and she couldn't get them out of her head. Why had she said that? Already in the corridor, she offered David. You know, things have gotten so confusing. Let me, you, and Ethan give the material for genetic testing and see what we find out. Are you related or not? David was surprised. Well, we're fine, but why do you need it? Nancy replied. For comparison's sake, it'll be clear that I'm certainly not related to him. Just let him get a little better. He and David took turns being on duty at Ethan's, and after 24 hours, thank God, he was finally feeling better. The crisis was over. The old man was slowly beginning to recover. He easily agreed to the examination, for he was sure David was definitely his son. Molly on his deathbed could not have lied. You don't joke about that. On the contrary, he was happy. Once it was officially confirmed, he and his son would definitely not be separated. Nancy waited for the results just out of curiosity. She had nothing to do with the family story. But still curious, was the tramp really David's dad? And so, 3 days later, David picked up the results of the examination and came with Nancy to his father's room. He said cryptically, "So, Dad, the moment of truth. Open and read." What? How can that be? How are they not related? And how is Nancy's daughter? What is this nonsense? Are they eating henna in their lab? Nancy didn't understand anything and snatched the result from him and began to read aloud loudly. David and Ethan. Degree of kinship 0%. Nancy and Ethan are 99 and 9/10% related. Nancy sobbed and kissed the paper, and David couldn't believe what he was hearing. How could it be? Had the old man got it all wrong? Was he out of his mind? Why? After all, in his mind, David had already accepted the idea that he had a father, and now what? Ethan huddled in his bunk and babbled frightenedly. I don't understand anything. There must be some mistake. Molly told me for sure that she gave birth to my son. Couldn't your lab have really messed something up? I don't believe it. You can't lie when you're dying. It's a great sin. David suddenly said, You know what? I'm going to ask my old friend Rob, a familiar investigator, to turn over the past. Otherwise, I'll just die of curiosity if I don't find out where the truth is and who is the son of whom. So we did, and this is what transpired. It turned out that Ethan had really been in a short-term relationship with Molly. She was a windy, promiscuous woman who didn't count her suitors. When the gentleman suddenly went to jail, Molly found out she was pregnant. She put it off until the very last moment, so she didn't have an abortion. She gave birth to a little girl, Nancy, and left her with her grandmother to raise. That's the story. And when Ethan asked her about it, she lied in anger that she had a son and a banker. She thought she'd be tortured. And Nancy had never seen or known her mother. She ran away from home. Her grandmother burned all her photos. She could not forgive her shameless daughter. So it was not David, but Nancy suddenly found her father. The woman was very happy, not ashamed of him at all. All these years she had missed having a man of her own by her side, just to consult, talk heart to heart. David accepted everything as it was, though he was upset, of course. After Ethan was discharged, they took him into the family home. There was enough room for everyone. Nancy took care of his father, dressing, shoeing, giving him a haircut, and examining him. It seemed that in that short time Ethan had gone from an unkempt bum, scaring away passersby with his beard, to a decent-looking, well-looking old man. The children immediately loved him, accepted him, and called him affectionately Grandpa. Ethan was happy beyond all measure. He never tired of thanking his daughter and David. Nancy, thank you, and David. I thought I was going to die under the fence in that abandoned manor house. I thought I was worthless and that my life was worthless. I'm sorry I wasted my life. I'm not worthy to be your father. Nancy was angry at such speeches. Dad, stop it. I don't want to hear it. I love you, whatever you are, you understand. That's it. Let's forget the past, cross it out and leave it. We live now. Why don't you come have dinner with us? I baked a cabbage pie. It's huge. My grandmother taught me when I was a child. After the whole family had eaten dinner, Alex walked up to his father and said, businesslike, Dad, can I talk to you for a minute? We have a serious man-to-man talk. David even choked up. He didn't expect that from his 7-year-old son. But he didn't laugh. So he answered, let's go. Let's talk if we have to. Nancy, I won't be long. Don't miss me. Alex, Marcus, and Mike went out on the veranda, and Alex was the first to begin an important conversation for them. Dad, the men and I have consulted, and we have decided that you are not behaving properly. You need to think about your behavior. David almost choked with laughter, but restrained himself, made a very serious face, and clarified. What's the problem? What's wrong with my behavior? Let's get to the bottom of this, shall we? Have I offended anyone? Alex sighed and continued. Yes, you did. You hurt Nancy. Why don't you ask her to marry you? That's no good. We were watching a show. I want to know everything. Even the little girls there said they wanted to get married when they grew up. I wish I had a mother like Nancy. Otherwise, she'll be mad at you. Marcus and Mike also timidly said, Our mother loves you, that's for sure. She's never been as cheerful and happy as she is now. And she doesn't cry at night anymore. We like you too. We agree to call you Daddy. So, are you going to get married? David was stunned. He thought Alex and Nancy's children were so young, but it turns out they already talk and know so much about life. They are worried. That's how it is. He guiltily excused himself. You guys are absolutely right. I'm the fool. I'll fix it tomorrow. And you're going to help me do it. This will be our man's secret. I really love your mom, and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. You're all my family now, okay? And I'm responsible for you. So what do you say we surprise your mom? Get the girls on board, but don't say a word to Mom. You can take Grandpa on the team too, so he won't be bored. The next day, Nancy, as usual, was running around the house and housekeeping, looking after the children. In the afternoon, she had a terrible headache, no strength left. Noticing that she was holding her head, Marcus said, Mammy, go lie down and take a nap for an hour, and we'll watch cartoons quietly in the living room. We promise not to shout and not to be naughty. She kissed her son, and she answered, Thank you for your concern. Okay, I'm really going to lie down. I just took a pill, and you're in charge, okay? And the woman went into the bedroom. Alex immediately called his father at work. All according to plan. Come quickly. We barely got her down. Nancy did fall asleep instantly, and before she knew it, she had been asleep for an hour and a half. She jumped out of bed in horror and listened. There was suspicious silence in the house. Oh my God, for sure something has happened. It can never be quiet with that many kids. How did I fall asleep for so long? I was just going to lie down for 10 minutes. Nancy ran frightened into the living room. She was immediately taken aback. She didn't even realize where she had gone. The whole room was literally strewn and littered with the most beautiful baskets of roses. Scarlet, white, soft pink, and even purple. David, in a suit, got down on one knee, pulled an engagement ring out of a box, and said, Nancy, my dear sweetheart, we have known each other not so long, but you have already managed to become so close, dear, and irreplaceable to me. I love you. And I want, as a man should, to ask for your hand and heart. Marry me. All the children, and we have 5 of them now, are my relatives. I won't hurt anyone, and I'll love everyone equally. Do you agree?" A dazed Nancy even cried because everything was so solemn and beautiful. She nodded her head and hugged David and whispered to him, "I agree. I love you a lot too." Suddenly there was a round of applause from behind. All their children and Ethan came out. Satisfied Alex was holding a video camera. "There, that's better. It's a keepsake. Congratulations." The others also shouted joyfully, "Hooray! We're a real family now, with Mom and Dad and Grandpa, just like everyone else. Let's go get some cake." Daddy bought a huge one. Ethan walked over to his daughter and gave her a fatherly hug. "Congratulations to you, my daughter. I'm very happy for you all. I feel so good here because in my life I have never known home warmth and comfort. And now it feels like heaven. Be happy with David. He is a great man. You can't go wrong with him. I know that for sure."